It was so easy for me all those years to say, I love God. I love God. I'm gonna do these crazy things for God. But it's much harder to go, He is crazy about me.
Francis Chan is a name that resonates within modern Christianity as a symbol of radical commitment, representing a man widely known for giving away millions of dollars in book royalties and famously walking away from the thriving megachurch he had founded. He has consistently challenged believers to move beyond a comfortable, passive faith and to embrace what he calls a crazy love for God, a passionate and all-consuming devotion. However, very few people who admire his intense faith are aware that before he became a powerful voice for radical Christianity, his life was built upon a foundation of relentless and successive tragedies. From the very first moment he entered the world, he was confronted with a devastating cost, as his own birth led directly to the death of his mother. From that initial loss, the specter of death seemed to follow him persistently throughout his childhood, shaping the man he would become. This is an exploration of the profound tragedies that defined the life and faith of Francis Chan, offering a deeper understanding of why a person might choose to live with such fierce and uncompromising intensity. A life that began with loss, 1967. On August 31st, 1967, in the bustling Chinatown district of San Francisco, California, Francis Chan was born into a world of immediate sorrow. His parents, Pak Sum Chan and Wan Bing Mue, were immigrants from Hong Kong, who were both deeply committed to their faith and active in ministry, with his mother having served as a Bible woman and his father as a pastor in their home country. Their life in America was humble, centered around their family and their service within the church community. However, the joy of Francis's arrival was tragically overshadowed by an event that would define the rest of his existence. During the delivery, his mother suffered a severe hemorrhage, a complication that proved fatal, meaning the very act of giving her son life cost her own. Consequently, Francis began his life not with the warmth of a mother's embrace, but with the cold, undeniable presence of her absence. The narrative of his first moments on earth is not one of celebration, but of a newborn's cries mingling with the silence of death, as he was left without the mother he would never know. This profound loss was made even more absolute by a stark and painful reality within his family home, where there were no photographs of his mother to be found. Her absence was total, not just a physical void, but a visual one as well, creating an empty space in his heart and history that could never truly be filled. Years later, as an adult reflecting on his beginnings, Francis Chan would speak of a lingering, subconscious burden he carried, confessing the haunting feeling that, "I started my life by killing my mother." This sentiment was not a logical conclusion, but an emotional weight. A deep psychological scar formed in the crucible of his first day of life, setting the stage for a childhood marked by further pain, a shattered childhood, and an unending nightmare of loss. The death of his mother was not an isolated tragedy, but merely the first chapter in a story of a childhood that would be systematically dismantled by one loss after another. It was a period where every attempt at healing was interrupted by a new wound, each one deeper and more painful than the last, creating a relentless cycle of grief that seemed to have no end. After his wife's death, Francis's father was left to raise 3 children on his own, a task that cast a heavy, sorrowful silence over their home. The family's existence became focused purely on survival, on the practicalities of providing food and shelter, which left little room for emotional expression or affectionate warmth. Francis grew up in an environment where love was rarely spoken or shown, and his relationship with his father was one of distance and even fear. It was only much later in his life that he would come to understand that this fear of his earthly father perhaps gave him a preliminary framework for understanding the concept of a holy fear of God. During those formative years, however, all he felt was separation and a growing sense of confusion, leading him to quietly ask the questions that would haunt him for years. How could a God who is described as loving possibly allow such terrible things to happen to his family? The instability of his young life took another dramatic turn when, At around the age of 4 or 5, his father made the difficult decision to send him to Hong Kong to be cared for by his paternal grandmother. For a small child, this sudden uprooting felt like an exile, as he was transported overnight to a foreign land with a language and culture that were entirely alien to him. His grandmother was a devout Buddhist, and Francis was immediately immersed in a world filled with the constant smell of burning incense, the echoing sounds of temple bells, and the daily rituals of ancestor worship, including the burning of paper money. This spiritual environment was in complete opposition to the Christian faith of his parents, creating a profound sense of conflict and confusion within him. His loneliness there was absolute, as he could not understand the local language, received almost no communication from his father in America, and spent his nights sleeping alone on a thin mat, feeling utterly abandoned. He was caught between two vastly different worlds, the distant Christian world of his father and the immediate Buddhist world of his grandmother, a tension that planted the seeds of a deep spiritual struggle. After a few years, Francis returned to the United States, where his father had remarried a woman named Amy Law, and the family, which now included a new half-sister, began to experience a fragile sense of normalcy. That brief period of peace, however, was violently shattered in 1976, when Francis was only 8 years old. His stepmother, Amy, was killed in a horrific car accident on a rain-slicked highway in Los Angeles, plunging the family back into the depths of grief. In an act that seemed harsh, but was perhaps born of his own overwhelming sorrow, his father took young Francis to the morgue to identify the body. During that grim journey, a rare moment of connection occurred when his father placed a hand on his shoulder and held him for about 30 seconds. It was one of the very few times Francis ever felt that kind of physical comfort from him, a fleeting moment of warmth that was quickly extinguished as their home once again became a place of suffocating silence and unspoken pain. The relentless march of tragedy continued, culminating in the most heartbreaking event of his young life. His father was diagnosed with cancer, and after a short but difficult battle with the disease, he passed away in 1979. In a cruel twist of fate, he died on the very day that Francis turned 12 years old. The day that should have been filled with the joy of a birthday celebration, with cake and candles and laughter, was instead transformed into a day of mourning. Instead of birthday wishes, there were the final labored breaths of his father in a hospital room. On his 12th birthday, Francis Chan, having already lost his birth mother and his stepmother, became a full orphan. Yet, the darkness had not fully receded. After his parents' deaths, Francis and his siblings were cared for by various relatives, and he grew particularly close to an uncle and aunt who became his primary guardians. But even this last bastion of family stability was destined to be destroyed. While Francis was in high school, this final, and perhaps most brutal, tragedy struck. In a fit of rage, his uncle shot and killed his wife before turning the gun on himself. Francis arrived at the scene to witness the horrifying aftermath. The house cordoned off with police tape, emergency vehicles filling the street, and the chilling sight of body bags being carried from the home. Death had once again claimed what little was left of his family, this time not through illness or accident, but through an act of shocking internal violence, completing the utter devastation of his childhood. The profound and lasting scars of tragedy. This unrelenting series of tragedies did more than just take away the people Francis Chan loved. It inflicted deep and lasting psychological wounds that fundamentally shaped his perception of himself, the world, and God for many years to come. The pattern of loss was a cruel and repetitive drumbeat in his life, marking his early years with markers of grief rather than milestones of joy. He lost his mother at birth, his stepmother at age 8, his father at age 12, and his remaining parental figures, his aunt and uncle, in a violent murder-suicide during his teenage years. This constant cycle of bereavement instilled in him a pervasive and deep-seated feeling of abandonment, leaving him without any sense of a safe or stable foundation in his life. Every time he began to form a trusting bond with a caregiver, death would intervene and tear it away. This experience cultivated a profound loneliness that became ingrained in his soul, making him perpetually feel like an outsider who was observing life from the sidelines rather than truly belonging to any family or community. The immense suffering he endured also ignited a fierce and painful theological struggle within him. For years, he wrestled with the agonizing question of how a God who is supposed to be all-loving and all-powerful could stand by and allow his life to be shattered into so many pieces. The stark contrast between the devout Buddhist rituals of his grandmother in Hong Kong and the Christian teachings he later encountered about a personal, caring God created a significant internal conflict. He was forced to question which spiritual reality was true, and whether any divine being was actually concerned with the suffering of a lonely orphan boy. Over time, his grief, confusion, and pain hardened into a complex mixture of anger, bitterness, and doubt. He felt anger not just at his circumstances, but also at a God who seemed distant and silent in the face of his desperate prayers, setting him on a long and difficult journey to reconcile his faith with the harsh realities of his life. The echoes of a painful past in adult life. One might assume that after Francis Chan found a firm footing in his Christian faith, married, and became a highly respected pastor, the shadows of his past would finally recede. However, the traumas of his childhood continued to echo throughout his adult life, profoundly influencing his decisions and creating a different, more subtle kind of tragedy that placed immense pressure on the new family he was trying to build. He married his wife, Lisa, and together they raised a family of 7 children. When he founded Cornerstone Community Church in 1994 with just a small group of people, he could not have predicted its explosive growth into a megachurch of over 5,000 members. This success, combined with the phenomenal popularity of his best-selling book, Crazy Love, brought with it a new set of complex challenges for his family. Living out the radical message he preached, Francis made extreme choices that directly impacted his wife and children. He decided to give away the vast majority of their income, including millions of dollars in book royalties, to charities and missions focused on helping the poor. While this was an act of profound generosity, it demanded incredible sacrifice from Lisa. As Francis traveled extensively for speaking engagements and mission work, Lisa was left with the monumental task of homeschooling their 7 children, often managing the household completely on her own. She faced the constant pressure of maintaining the public image of a strong and perfect pastor's family, all while privately battling periods of deep anxiety and emotional exhaustion. Their family life was intentionally unstable, as Francis believed a comfortable life was contrary to the call of Christ. They moved frequently, lived in a small home to give more money away, and even invited a family with a recently incarcerated father to live with them. They embarked on long mission trips as a full family unit, living out of cramped spaces and constantly adjusting to new environments. Lisa has spoken openly about her struggles, about learning to trust God in the midst of fear and the challenge of remaining authentic in her faith while living in the public eye. Francis himself later acknowledged another form of internal tragedy he had to confront. He realized that he had grown to enjoy the admiration of the crowds and the feeling of being on stage, a form of affirmation that he came to see as a dangerous idol. He recognized that his own intensity, though born from a sincere desire to serve God, had created an enormous and often unseen burden for his wife and family, proving that tragedy could exist not only in loss, but also in the unintended consequences of one's most passionate convictions. The solitude of success and the pain of misunderstanding. By 2010, Francis Chan had reached what many would consider the pinnacle of ministerial success. Cornerstone was one of the largest and most influential churches in its region. His book, Crazy Love, was a New York Times bestseller that had transformed the perspectives of millions, and he was one of the most sought-after Christian speakers in the world. From the outside, he appeared to have achieved everything a pastor could hope for. Yet internally, he was wrestling with a profound sense of loneliness and spiritual discontent. As he looked out at the thousands of people who gathered each week to hear him preach, he felt an increasing unease, a growing conviction that something was fundamentally wrong with the model of church he had built. he began to question whether the modern megachurch, with its focus on one charismatic speaker, was truly aligned with the biblical vision of the church that Jesus and the apostles had established. He felt deeply troubled by the fact that thousands of people, each possessing unique spiritual gifts, were sitting passively in an audience to consume his gift alone, calling it a horrible waste. Suddenly, this internal conflict reached a breaking point when he confessed to his wife that the thought of his church being larger and more popular than one Jesus or the Apostle Paul might have had in the same city deeply disturbed him. He was haunted by the fear that the congregation was following him, Francis Chan, rather than truly following Jesus Christ. He felt that he was building his own kingdom, not the kingdom of God. This intense spiritual crisis led to his shocking decision to resign from Cornerstone Church on April 18, 2010. It was a choice born not of impulse, but of a deep internal agony and a desperate search for authenticity. After leaving the church he had poured his life into, he and his family moved to San Francisco to pioneer a network of small house churches called We Are Church. Yet, this radical move brought with it a new and painful form of tragedy. Misunderstanding and criticism from the very Christian community he was a part of. Many could not comprehend his decision to walk away from such a successful ministry, questioning his motives and judging his methods. The man who had once been celebrated was now viewed with suspicion by some, leaving him feeling isolated. The loneliness he now experienced was not from a lack of people, but from the profound solitude that comes from making a conviction-driven choice that few can understand. A tragedy known only to those who dare to walk a different path. A faith forged and tempered in the fires of pain. In reviewing the entire arc of his life, it becomes clear that Francis Chan's journey has been an unrelenting passage through suffering. From the trauma of his birth to the internal conflicts at the height of his success. He has endured the ultimate loss of an orphan, the deep loneliness of a cultural outsider, the agonizing spiritual struggle to find a loving God amidst the wreckage of his life, and the unique burdens of fame and misunderstanding. Yet, despite being subjected to so much pain, he consistently chose to live a life of extreme devotion to God. He chose to give away his wealth, to relinquish power and influence, and to embrace a life of instability in order to serve others. The tragedies of his past did not ultimately destroy him. Instead, they appear to have forged within him a powerful awareness of the brevity of life and the urgency of eternity. Perhaps many of us carry our own hidden wounds from the past, our own private losses that have shaped who we are. The story of Francis Chan serves as a powerful reminder of a profound truth. A strong and resilient faith is often not born in times of comfort and ease, but is instead forged, tested, and purified in the hottest fires of human suffering. Today, as we consider his life, perhaps we can move beyond simply admiring his radical actions and take a moment to appreciate the immense weight of the pain he has carried. It is only by understanding the true cost of his losses that we can begin to comprehend the incredible strength of a faith that has been repeatedly tested by tragedy and has, against all odds, refused to be consumed.